This camera was released in late 2008, and at the time it was offered for $499 with a kit lens, which was a remarkable value, and a ton of people ended up buying it. In fact, if you look up your favorite YouTuber, guarantee you they probably started on this camera right here. So I'll give you a moment to guess, and if you guessed the Canon Rebel XS, you are 100% correct. So in this video, I want to revisit this camera, reminisce a little bit, and then maybe talk about a perspective on camera bodies in general. So let's get started. So yes, sometime in 2009, I picked up this Canon Rebel XS. Not this one specifically, this one I picked up a couple of days ago for $100, but I picked up a brand new Canon Rebel XS. It was my very first camera that I had ever purchased in my life, and let me just say that using this again over the last couple of days after not seeing one for 13 years now, I am very happy with the technological advances that we have made in terms of camera bodies over the last decade or so. So the specs are not terribly impressive by today's standards. This is a 10 megapixel DSLR or digital single lens reflex camera. The technology was what everyone was using just a handful of years ago, and even to this day there are quite a few photographers who still use DSLRs. It shoots at 3 frames per second, and it has a whopping 7, yes, I said 7 autofocus points. However, with this model, they were phase detection autofocus points instead of contrast detection, which was a big upgrade back in 2008. Maximum ISO is 1600, and you absolutely cannot record video, not even 480p with this camera. The build quality is not terribly impressive either. It doesn't have any weather sealing, and it is a plastic body that just feels plasticky. In many ways, it feels more like a toy camera than a real camera, especially if you start to rotate the included kit lens, which is the oh so popular 18-55 IS. The lens makes the whole camera feel even cheaper. It's a remarkable combination. Now, this video is not about me complaining about a 13-year-old camera. To the contrary, this is very eye-opening because I remember when this camera came out, a ton of people bought it, and they would buy the cheap Nifty 50 1.8, and they would achieve some pretty amazing results with that very inexpensive combo. In fact, a lot of people bought this camera and started professional wedding photography businesses. Now, eventually they would upgrade to Canon's better products as they came out, the T1i, T2i, 60D, 5D, but this is where they all started. A lot of empires were built with this as the very first camera that they ever picked up and that they ever used. Remember that Canon did not have a huge lineup of cameras in the very beginning. They just had a couple of models, and obviously they expanded that over the years, but in the beginning this was one of the few cameras that you could buy for under $1,000 that could get you, at the time, professional level results. Beyond that, this camera inspired, I would say, millions upon millions of people to either get into the hobby of photography or to start a professional business in photography. And I'm not joking, in 2008, in Canon's own press release, their own headline reads, "Canon's new EOS Rebel XS camera looks to inspire a new generation of digital SLR photographers." And if you read further, they describe it as a fast, non-intimidating, lightweight, easy-to-use camera that produces excellent images and starts emerging photographers off on the right foot. And that was an admirable mission, but I don't think that Canon even realized the magnitude of impact this little camera would have on their own sales, on the industry, and on photography as a whole, because I remember these cameras would sell year after year, and each subsequent model would become more and more popular, and people would buy them up. Everyone was shooting Canon. Everyone I knew on the internet was shooting Canon. Everyone in my family was shooting Canon. It was immensely popular. And even to this day, they are releasing variants of this camera right here. I remember just 2 years ago, Potato Jet did a video reviewing the most popular camera in the US of A, and the Canon T7, which is basically the updated version of this camera right here, topped that list. I tried to look up sales data for this camera because I was curious how many of these things they sold over the years, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find anything. You can argue that Sony maybe wouldn't not have even gotten into the APS-C game if they hadn't seen the popularity of these types of models from Canon, because competition really pushed both Canon and Sony and Nikon and Fuji into this frontier of converting point-and-shoot users to more professional interchangeable lens cameras. Now, I want to show you guys how this camera compares to something more modern, such as this A6100 and a lens from 2021. But before I show you this side by side, which is going to be pretty eye-opening, let's talk about today's video sponsor, Anker. Anker sent me these two new power stations, the 521 and the 535. Both models feature rugged industrial-grade electronic design with premium lithium iron phosphate batteries at the core, which can endure 3,000 cycles of full charge and recharge. Now, the industry standard is about 500 cycles, so these at 3,000 means that they have a 6 times longer lifespan, which is very significant. These power stations are designed to be used for 10 years or 3,000 times with at least 80% battery capacity remaining. You can fast charge your phones, tablets, and even laptops using the 60-watt USB-C PD output. This means you can forget your laptop charger at home and still be able to power it at high speed. This port can also be used to fast charge the power station itself, which takes 1.5 hours to reach 80% for the 521 model and 2.4 hours on the 535. You can enable built-in power saving mode, which prevents battery drain by having the power station turn off once your devices are fully charged, and each one has a built-in light bar, which is great for emergencies or blackouts. The 521 model has 2 AC outlets, 1 USB-C, 2 USB-A ports, and 1 vehicle class outlet with a total of 256 watt-hours of capacity, which is more than enough for a weekend getaway out camping. If you want something with more capacity, the 535 has 4 AC outlets, 1 USB-C, 3 USB-A, and 1 vehicle class outlet with a total of a whopping 512 watt-hours of energy. You can run a mini cooler for 8.5 hours, a fan for almost 11 hours, and a 43-inch TV for 3.4 hours. In a more practical sense, I think either one of these power stations would be brilliant to take with you on location if you are trying to shoot something in the middle of nowhere. You can recharge camera batteries, you can run lights off of them, and you can run your laptop at full speed with no outlet in sight and no outlet needed. So definitely check these two out in the description below. Special thank you goes out to Anker for being a continued supporter of this channel. Now let's get back to the Canon XS. All right, check out this portrait of my wife with the Canon XS versus the Sony a6100. The difference is dramatic, as it should be with 12 years of innovation and a very large price difference between both setups. The biggest difference coming from autofocus, where you have 7 autofocus points competing with 425 and eye tracking. But if you were to take the Canon image on its own, I can't say that it is absolutely unusable. Sure, it is a poor image compared to what we are now used to, but for posting on your Instagram, I don't think that anyone would be complaining. And certainly back in 2008 and 2009, the images and the results that people were getting were up there with other cameras that were much more expensive. And it is truly impressive that after 13 years of use and abuse, this camera is still functioning perfectly. There isn't a button, a flash, or a cover broken on it. It feels cheap, but it still works. And the failure rate on these cameras is extremely low. It's a dinosaur that just won't give up. A lot of people still ask me, is the Sony a6000 outdated? Is it worth buying in 2022? And for the most part, I've been replying to those questions by saying, yes, it's from 2014. Sony has made drastic improvements to newer camera bodies. So I've transitioned personally to the a6100, a6400, and a6600, just because I like the results of those 3 camera bodies. But I've realized something while making this video. While researching specs for my old Canon Rebel XS, I realized that there are people out there, young photographers, young future professionals, who are just discovering this old camera for the very first time this year, because there are videos about it, and those videos have thousands of views, and the comments have real questions, and the feedback is genuine. So while maybe partially in the back of my head I've dismissed the a6000 as a viable first camera for people looking at the a6100 as a better alternative, this video was a good reminder for me of my beginnings and how humbling this camera is to use, and really truly how remarkable the a6000 is on its own. I look back at the memories that I created with that camera, traveling through Japan, going all the way through Europe with it, and it is remarkable all of the photos and the videos that I took with just a $400 camera that I had in my jacket pocket. Similarly, this YouTube channel, I started not knowing what it was. It has become what it has become because of the Canon Rebel XS, because that camera in 2009 to a then young boy was a tool that inspired, a tool that created interest, that motivated, that captured my life moments and stored them on a little SD card. You always remember your first car or your first love because they leave a meaningful impact on your life, whether that is positive or negative. And this was my first camera. I spent $500 of my own money that I earned pushing carts at a grocery store for $7 an hour to buy it. So for me, this camera is one I will always remember. It's the one that created and fueled a passion for photography that definitely changed my life. And that's just one of the reasons I think that this camera is the most important APS-C camera ever released. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.